The vision's the same vision, which is to help teams collaborate better and then share that knowledge across their organization and build the tailored solutions they have without, spending months writing custom code all from scratch.
Yeah.
Uh, AI is a productivity tool in the mix to help those teams build better solutions, publish better content, discover information faster. And so we're very excited about that for a product that started out saying, can we let anybody, even if they're not a developer, build an intranet site?
Welcome back to the Teams Insider podcast for a special SharePoint 25th anniversary episode. We talked to Jeff Teper, who is president of Microsoft 365 Collaborative Apps and Platforms, about the whole SharePoint journey right from the start, some of the exciting developments that are coming in the future too. We talk about the challenges of moving from a server-based product to a massive scale SaaS product in Microsoft 365, and we get his thoughts on SharePoint as a foundation for AI and agents. Really great conversation. Thanks very much to Jeff for taking the time to jump on the pod. And also many thanks to Neat, who are the sponsor of this podcast. Really appreciate all their support of the community. On with the show. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. A really exciting one and a really timely one. A big birthday for SharePoint, 25 years. And very excited to have Jeff Teper. Jeff, maybe just your role is way more than SharePoint these days. Maybe you could just start by giving everybody your role and your current responsibilities.
Yeah. And thanks, Tom, for having me. And thanks, everybody who wants to listen to us talk about SharePoint past, present, and future. It's very humbling, the role we've had in the community. I'm the president of the Microsoft 365 Collaborative Apps and Platforms. So that includes SharePoint and OneDrive and Teams and Engage and Planner. We build the collaboration tools that help people work together. And of course, agents are joining those teams as well. And that's obviously our big focus.
Awesome. I'm really excited to go through some of the history of the 25 years. 25 puts you in a kind of rare sphere of some of the really big brands in Microsoft, the Excel, Word, PowerPoint. But I think SharePoint is arguably the first kind of as a service product before as a service was a thing. It was obviously initially kind of an intranet story. But can you take us back to that kind of very beginning? Because it was humble beginnings to like a massive product now.
The whole history is kind of interesting and it would take too long, but I'll go through it really quickly.
Yeah.
There was one branch of stuff that I was on, which was I was actually a PM in the MSN team. We turned some of our servers into a product we sold to other organizations for intranets and internet sites called Site Server. I ran the Site Server Standard Edition publishing knowledge management features. Satya actually ran the commerce features. Satya flopped as a product, and so we rebooted, focused on intranet and knowledge management. There was another branch of SharePoint that evolved out of, say, the front page server extensions and the Office team. Office team buys front page. And so those two projects evolve along, and my thing was Tahoe and PKM. The other branch in Office, I think, was called the Office Server Extensions. We hit on the idea of SharePoint Portal and Team, and then in version 2, they actually built on top of each other. So that was sort of the history of how we got going. There was really a huge need. Office needed a server. Microsoft needed an intranet and portal product. We could have done them as 2 or 3 different products. We could have done a document management server and an intranet server and a collab server, but we did one family of SharePoint. That was both an app and you could customize it. And that was really a hit. We felt a need. The version 2 was a much better product than version 1. People started jumping on the bandwagon. Version 3 added a lot more capabilities, and the community took off. And then we can talk about the cloud.
Yeah, and
that was sort of the origin story.
Yeah, community is such a big part of it. I mean, like a bit of personal history. It was WSS. I was working at a Cisco partner doing Cisco Call Manager stuff, And my first exposure was WSS and building an internal workflow just with SharePoint lists when I was still doing Cisco stuff. And that was my first exposure to the SharePoint community. And it was such a strong community. I think partly because it's kind of a build anything type product. I mean, you must have felt that as well from the early days with the community.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I always looked at was what were all the things that people were doing for intranets and workflow apps that they were building from scratch, and how could we give people a more out-of-box solution that was customizable? And people did write a lot of code to SharePoint and still do. But we were hoping to help them write less code to solve their business problems faster. And we were never going to do every use case out of box. So you had to be customizable, extensible. And that's where a lot of the community fell in love with the product, building list-based workflows. In fact, you probably know this. We just in the last few weeks went to preview with a new new workflow customization experience. It's inside SharePoint and Teams. It builds on Power Platform, but it's got a simple UI. And so we're still plugging away at making that easier and better and more consistent across Microsoft 365. So that's, yeah.
And I guess part of that success as well, there was obviously a massive change or kind of adoption going from server-based into the cloud. And that must have been interesting because there was so much capability on server, and obviously cloud, you have to be slightly different in terms of features and scale.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's, I think, I published on LinkedIn this, I think I called it 3 eras. There's not a lot of products that survive in tech 25 years through 3 eras. And it's because when a new tech sea change comes along, there's a set of very smart people who start from scratch trying to solve those same problems without any of the constraints or of the previous generation, and they optimize on the next generation.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a drag race, if you will, between the people from the previous era. Do those companies actually get what's going to happen? And the new entrants, do they build the depth? And it's all good for customers because that competition puts pressure in the system. And so we certainly went through that. I'm very proud that the SharePoint conference in 2008, Bill Gates announced that SharePoint Online would be available for organizations of all size. So we got multi-tenant SaaS as early as 2008. The market wasn't ready. The customers weren't ready. The tech we had for multi-tenancy wasn't very good at that time. And it was really a slog for several years, both working with customers and internally with the architecture. And in fact, I remember that 2014 SharePoint conference, even then, where we started to be decent at cloud scale, a lot of customers said, my management will never let us move to the cloud. And so it was obvious to us the cloud thing was going to happen 99%. There's no cloud on a submarine under the ocean, for example, with the Navy. But most people have gone at this point. And we had both external and internal challenges. And I'm really, really grateful the community stuck with us, but also very proud of the team. We have published these numbers. The SharePoint platform now supports over 1 billion users, somewhere between 5 and 10 million requests per second, depending on what time of day it is and where the time zones of the world overlap. Many, many exabytes of data. So we've turned this server that ran under my desk in 2001 into an elastic cloud service that runs on millions of cores with exabytes of data. But that wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for our customers. It wasn't easy for our team. And I know it wasn't always easy for our community.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are astronomical. And I guess not only has the scale changed, but what you can do SharePoint and what SharePoint 4 has evolved. So, you've now got the kind of headless embedded options. You've become the data platform for other products. Obviously, on the team side, all the data lives back in SharePoint. OneDrive usage, I imagine, has exploded as well.
Yeah, it's funny. This feature we introduced in V2. And I remember when somebody in our team came up with the idea, one of our original GPMs, John Kaufman, wonderful guy. It was both our first big failure, but also a bigger success that we had this thing called MySite, if you remember,
I
where
remember.
every person got their own site. They could store their stuff in it, and it would have a sort of public facing view to share stuff out. And boy, did IT hate that feature.
Yeah, yeah,
It's the
yeah. We don't
first
want
time.
everybody to have a site we have to manage.
It's the first, I until then I got that people would either buy or not buy a product, but it was the first time I learned people would say, "I'm going to buy your product, but I'm going to turn off these features." And so it's like, oh, we were so depressed because we thought it was such a good idea, and we plugged along at it, and eventually, other entrants came in the market, like Dropbox, and good for them with a simple value prop. It started to come through the side door, and IT said, "What do you got?" And we said, "Well, remember, you told us to
Yeah,
turn
yeah.
off this MySite thing." And then, to give it a consistent name, we aligned across the consumer and business parts of the company and named that feature instead of SharePoint MySite, OneDrive. And it's totally fine that if 99% of OneDrive users have no idea about the MySite history, but it's the exact same thing. Um, and over the last 4 or 5 years, we did a conversions project to move, over 1 billion OneDrive accounts onto the SharePoint platform. We had to do a Herculean amount of engineering work to make SharePoint uh, cheaper to run, even more elastic. But here we are. There's over 1 billion
Yeah.
MySites for a feature that flopped when it released because
It,
IT
it,
wouldn't
it
let us
it's
turn it
amazing how
on.
you can be right feature wrong time or wrong feature right time, whatever it is. The things have to align, don't they?
Exactly. Exactly.
So talking of alignment, I could reminisce with you on the past for much, much longer, but I wanted to hear your thoughts on now. And I guess it feels like a really great match. The idea that AI is obviously the thing in the industry at the moment and really impacting, and AI needs the data, the context, and now we've got all the corporate data in SharePoint and in OneDrive. How early did you kind of see those worlds coming together?
Yeah, I think there's sort of um, pre and post large language models. You remember, and I just posted on Twitter this morning, the first slide when we created the team, the publishing and knowledge management team in 1998. Oh my God. Um, PKM knowledge management. And we wanted algorithms to help people organize information. We didn't want to just make people assign metadata to things. We knew that people didn't like to do that sort of thing, uh, even though that was some people's favorite features of the product. And still to this day, we have nice metadata views that's
I
good.
think I think it's a favorite feature of a very specific person, but then trying to get an enterprise to do it at scale was
Yeah,
always quite
it's
the
like using
challenge.
a CRM system. Salespeople don't come into work and say, "I really want to fill out a CRM system all day long." Um, So we did use some algorithms. Even the first version, we worked with Microsoft Research, Sudhame, Eric Horvitz on an algorithm called Support Vector Machines, which was a machine learning algorithm to categorize content. Didn't work very well, needed a lot of training data that, again, people weren't going to do. We worked on some search algorithms. We eventually bought a really great company called Fast out of Norway. People might remember that team still powers some of the SharePoint and Copilot features. But we introduced something called Delve that was basically better search algorithms to build views and feeds. So we'd been working at this problem for a while, but um, none of it was any good until the LLMs came along. I mean, the
Mm.
LLMs are such a leap that when you talk about things like search indices, they at the bottom are a very simple set of algorithms for counting the relative number of words in documents. The LLMs sort of deeply understand content a lot better. They're very, very expensive to run. And so when Satya, we knew the LLMs were coming because they predated ChatGPT, but we'd seen LLMs with 1 million parameters, 10 million parameters, 100 million parameters. But I remember when Satya brought some of us in a room with the OpenAI folks, and they did some demos of what would become GPT-4. And he said, okay, all of you go use this cool tech to do something interesting. And so the Microsoft 365 team came up with Copilot, where we basically said, let's take the data in SharePoint and Teams and Outlook and marry it to the LLM and see what we can do. And it's magical. I mean, it's in 2026, it's now almost taken for granted. But when you first saw this stuff in 23, 24, you couldn't believe it would work because you'd been hearing about AI for 50 years. Not, I hadn't been around that long, but people have been talking about AI
Yeah.
for that long. And so it was really these billion plus parameter language models that started to do the tricks that would let us build the features we were building. And then sort of fast forwarding a little bit, the next leap beyond the base language model are these reasoning models where if given more time to think, they can do interesting things. They can write code, they can organize your content for you. And so the things we're going to, I'm not sure when you're dropping this, but when on March 2nd, 2026, when we have our 25th event, we're going to show a bunch of new UX and AI capabilities, some of which are only possible because of this very last round in the models where you give them time to think and basically write the SharePoint things to build a website or grovel through all the content and organize all the metadata. And it's, as they say in AI, it's zero shot. The thing we did in 2001, this auto categorization, I think I remember you needed 50 training documents for the tagging to work. And so nobody was going to do that.
Yeah.
We thought they might, but nobody did it. And so now it's all zero shot, where it'll go through and it'll rip through all your documents and get the product and customer columns in the SharePoint list correct for the most part. So we've had this vision for a while. It was really when the large language models came out and the reasoning helped them think that we could build the kinds of things we in the whole industry is building right now.
Yeah, it's funny because it seems like forever and no time to me at the same time, like from the kind of GPT-4 to now. And you like you say, reasoning was a really big step forward where we were like going back and forth. And more recently, we've had much bigger parameter models and bigger context windows. And that's really exciting, I guess, in the SharePoint context, because you can, when we come into things like agentic, we can put more into the agent context. And I feel like SharePoint and your products are a lot of the foundation of that enterprise knowledge.
Yeah. And you see a mirror of this in the coding world with GitHub. GitHub and SharePoint are kind of twins. GitHub is the thing for coders where people write their code and store it and so forth. And the models sort of plodded along. GitHub Copilot was very cool, autocomplete, and then the models got better. And now GitHub Copilot with either the Anthropic models or the OpenAI models can generate whole apps. And, we have this thing called GitHub Copilot CLI, where on the command line, you can pick whatever model you want and works over your repo and does all this magic stuff. And so that's a mirror of what's going on in the SharePoint universe, whereas these same models from late last year, just like they can write code, we've taught them how to design a SharePoint site, a list, categorize documents, in addition to doing, answering questions about documents and preparing documents and so forth. So it's exciting. And it's sort of weird that, to have things that we tried a year ago that didn't work, and now they definitely work.
Yeah, it's in like absolutely that feels true. And it's if you kind of plot where it's gone in the last few years, and you consider it's going to potentially keep going in that direction. I think there's two things there. One, I mean, even if the capabilities didn't get any better than they are today, there's an amazing amount of value to unlock. But also, I think I'm not a coder; I'm a more IT pro side. But like when I see what I can do, not being a coder now, and B, what coders can do, I feel like knowledge work is somewhere between like 18 and 24 months behind that. Like we're just starting to understand the concepts that coders are now all using AI. And as you say, they can build faster, they can move quicker. I'm really excited to see that coming into the knowledge work sphere.
Yeah. And that's sort of, I think the vision, I was going back as part of prepping for this event, and you'll see us as we go live with it. The vision's the same vision, which is to help teams collaborate better and then share that knowledge across their organization and build the tailored solutions they have without, spending months writing custom code all from scratch.
Yeah.
AI is a productivity tool in the mix to help those teams build better solutions, publish better content, discover information faster. And so we're very excited about that for a product that started out saying, can we let anybody, even if they're not a developer, build an intranet site? I mean, that was the question. And now, of course,
a few lines of vision. Or what I'm excited about is the idea that the LLMs can actually help you design. So you might say, I want this, but actually you can have the LLM come back to you and say, well, how about this? Have you considered this, that, like pull the information out of you and create your vision.
Yeah. And a big part of this that we haven't talked about yet, and we knew it would be an advantage coming from Microsoft, but we didn't appreciate the depth that we would invest based on customer feedback, is security and compliance and governance. Oh my gosh, the amount of feedback, requests, and happiness, as we've done data loss prevention, classification, labeling, and protection, information barriers. So we have, if somebody wants a highly sensitive document library to encrypt all the documents on egress, and yet still have Copilot be able to reason over those when they're in the secure cloud, that was a phenomenal amount of work. And so, when people sometimes say, hey, you can vibe code a website, I'd say, yeah, but not one with all the level of security and compliance and access control and authorization, encryption and data loss prevention and auditing, e-discovery and so forth that we have. And so we're trying to bring people that easy building, easy collaboration, but on a secure, compliant foundation, because we've learned in the last 25 years, the security and compliance stuff is required. If you don't have it, nothing will be used.
Have you seen the adoption of those features get a big kind of shot in the arm because of the LLM? Like I felt like Delve was an early one of that, like, oh, stuff discoverable, we need to be more secure. But like it must have, I'm sure you must have seen an increase now because of LLM use proliferating.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, we learned a lot from Delve. Delve was, I would say, in my career, the product that perhaps even more than MySite, because MySite eventually made its way through once it was clear there was going to be competitors putting pressure on IT to unlock personal cloud storage. Delve was the one that I felt had the most potential, that we got the most blowback on, because we respected security, but in the end, IT said they didn't trust their own security.
And you respected the security that IT had configured or not?
Yeah. Well, what they would say is, look, if the user's storing this stuff on a SharePoint site and another user has access to the SharePoint site, you can't show that to people, even if it supports the ACLs, because we don't trust the first person to have set the permissions right. That was fair. I think there's a couple things. One is just users and organizations have just gotten a little bit more savvy about their information governance and life cycle. People send out mails. Hey, is this team or this SharePoint site still valid? You have to attest to the permissions and so forth.
Mm.
But we had a huge breakthrough a few years ago when we released something called SharePoint Advanced Management. And pre-LLM, we had a product called SharePoint Premium. You might remember that. And SharePoint Advanced Management was the biggest hit in that. Actually, sales of that were remarkable. And that's the lesson for me. If the easiest thing for me to go build and sell a lot of is more security stuff. So anyway, we built SharePoint Advanced Management that reports on your permissions and analyzes oversharing, and people really liked it and used it. And then Copilot comes along, and we're going to sell Copilot, and we decide to basically give everybody who's bought a couple hundred licenses of Copilot SharePoint Advanced Management for free.
Yeah, I think that was a big unlock I saw in the field, because it was like a real blocker to adoption, that people were scared about what data was accessible and what wasn't.
And so SharePoint Advanced Management usage is growing gangbusters. I mean, we look at the data every day, but we review it in a meeting with Seshamani, who runs that team. And it's unbelievable. You talk about building product that fits a need, and in of itself, our SharePoint admin stuff will also be more LLM powered, so IT can ask questions and so forth. But if we'd had SharePoint Advanced Management when we did Delve would have had a little bit better reception, because we needed to give IT the confidence that the permissions were right, not just that they were going to be respected. And so the other thing that's come along, of course, over the top is labels. That if IT doesn't trust the ACLs, they can just stamp a label on these 100 SharePoint sites are top secret and then excluded from Copilot. So I think between CLP and SAM, we have the tools that IT needs to make AI work. And that's really unique. I mean, for those of people who know me, we compete with some amazing companies, but this is why you should use Copilot as opposed to the other AIs, because we have a symbiotic relationship with all the security and compliance capabilities in Microsoft 365.
Is that kind of a challenge internally, because things are moving so incredibly fast, and obviously different shops and different products and different teams can throw things up in beta and be like, we can do this, and you have to go, I've got 450 million users and X exabytes. I've got to think slightly more carefully about how I throw features out.
This is so hard. It's interesting. Where this has actually come up a lot is Teams, because we've added a lot of features to Teams in the last 5 years. Some net new, some integration with Microsoft 365 and Copilot, and some, very frankly, people said, "Hey, Slack has this thing. Why don't you have it too?"
Yeah.
And we've been a little predisposed to roll those out as quickly as possible, because we have a set of customers and potential customers that say, "Hey, I want to see all my chats and channels in one place and organize how I want as an end user. I can do those, and other platforms, I need it in your system." And so we rolled that out last year, customizable sections in Teams. And we got a lot of blowback from IT that, how do I turn this off? I don't want I don't trust my end users to customize their own environment. And, there we had a really principled discussion that there will be major features like Copilot where IT has the power to say, I'm turning that on when I'm ready. But things that were customization of the end user experience, we decided that we're not going to have like some year-long off by default, wait and see kind of experience. We just think it's going to frustrate hundreds of millions of users. So we have occasionally made calls in I would say 90% of the time on those calls we're right. 10% of the time we're wrong. We will say mea culpa. We'll
I would say
take it back.
when you are wrong, you get the sustained feedback, and you probably
Yeah. But,
like things change, right?
but sometimes I think we've been right and not everybody has agreed with us. And there's still, I would say one of the things we learned in the cloud transition, uh, Teams ships every 2 weeks. Office used to ship every 2.5 years. And when I took over Teams from Brian McDonald, who retired, we still had a lot of IT people who asked us, can't you let me deploy Teams every 6 months or every year? And, you know, we said, look, we're just going to be tell us the concerns you have about usability, change management, app compatibility. We're going to address all those just like the rest of the industry, but that won't serve our customers well, and it's not going to serve you well because we're not going to be competitive. We'll fall behind, et cetera. But we knew we'd have to earn. It was a tense situation with some of these customers, but we would have to earn the trust. And we ship now Teams every 2 weeks, and I can't, not to say we've not made a mistake in the last year. We've made some, but I can't tell you the last customer. It's been a couple of years since a customer said, I wish it went back to the old days where I could deploy your software every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and in comparison to the other problem, which is like lots of things of like, well, this other product has X, Y, and Z features, and Teams is still stuck with, the subset. So yeah, if you want to be competitive, you've got to be moving.
Yeah, and the other thing is we would say, look, for us, we can't make infinite permutations of our software in the wild, secure, reliable, and performant, and make sure they interop. It was that period where we transitioned to the cloud, and we had to make, decade-old versions of Office work with new versions of Office that supported real-time co-auth, but the old versions that didn't. That was a slog, and it wasn't when you got the old client and the new client talking together, we made it work in a least common denominator way, but it was not a thing that made end users super happy. So anyway, not to say we're cavalier about this. There are definitely things where we introduce a major new UX, like one of the things we just did last year was introduced threads in Teams channels. In addition to the post reply model, we had that thing in preview for 3 months. We told customers about it 3 months before that. We did a lot of change management, and I'm really proud. We, for the most part, have mainly heard thank you for getting that out, not, oh my gosh, you moved the cheese on our end users.
Yeah, I think it's a tough challenge when you've just got that many active users. I think by definition, with that user base, nobody is always going to be happy. Like there's some percentage that are always going to want to do different things. So I guess that's the constant tension. But yeah, I appreciate, obviously I'm very close to Teams, how fast that has moved.
But that said, we have a big, let's go back to SharePoint, big set of new end user updates for SharePoint and how the user experience.
Talk us through some of that, because like this will be dropping after the kind of the 25th birthday, later that week, so the news will all be out.
So I think we're doing 3 things. One is we've taken a fresh look at the design language of Teams, SharePoint, to make it simpler and lighter. You see this neat thing where that SharePoint Chrome is in the background, but your site elevates above it. It's really slick. I'm super proud of the design team. You have control of your branding and look and feel, and you have more layout capabilities than ever. We have this fun thing called flexible layout that's unconstrained by columns and so forth. It's all amazing. So we have a new design system. Second is we changed the information architecture of the product. I think it's very coherent. There's 5 things on the left. One is whatever you want your intranet home to be. We had a thing for a while called Viva Connections. We had what could be your home site. You pick. If you work at Contoso or Coca-Cola or Microsoft, the first thing you see in SharePoint is Contoso and the Contoso landing page.
Which is what every internal comms team wants, right? They're them. They're not SharePoint.
And it's branded how you want. And it brings in the dashboard and out-of-box capabilities we did with Viva Connections. But no more, hey, what's SharePoint? What's Viva? What's my intranet? Your intranet's there. It's got your name in the suite nav. And it's the great thing. Then there's the 3 SharePoint pieces, which are discover. Let me do them in the logical order as opposed to the UX order. Build a site, list, doc library or agent, publish content, and schedule it to be distributed on multiple channels, sort of like what we had with Viva Amplify. And then discover, a little bit like what we had with Delve, where different pivots on interesting content and people and so forth. So it's interesting to talk about how the children of Viva and Delve and Copilot all make their way back into the SharePoint UI. And then last but definitely not least is OneDrive, because one of the educational things we have to do with people is OneDrive's your modern file explorer that can browse your OneDrive, but also all the document libraries that are associated with SharePoint and Teams. And so we felt you should have this file browser, since the main use case, the first use case of a lot of people in SharePoint is browsing their files, have it there. So you have your intranet, publish, build, and discover, OneDrive. And that's a big new UI change. So we're letting people opt in for a while because we want to make sure in public preview we get feedback. If the feedback's really good, we'll go to GA with that on by default broadly for everybody. But we'll listen. But that's an example of a big enough system change. In the preview stage, at least, we wanted to give people control and feedback, and we'll have a discussion. SharePoint's tricky because it's both an app and a platform, and there will be some people that will want it to be a headless website thing where none of our Chrome ever shows up. I don't think that's the soul of why most people buy us. So
I love that build gets a top level billing, because I feel like that's an important part of the product. And back to this, I feel like LLMs are making knowledge workers more powerful to build their own solutions, be it a fancy list, a SharePoint site, or an agent or agentic. So making that top level is like, oh, this is a product where I can build a solution.
Yeah. So when Adam Harmitz and Denise Tribona and their teams first showed this to me, I don't know, 18 months ago, I was mad. The reason I was mad is like, oh my God, you finally got this right. I wish we'd done this like 15 years ago. We should have had your branded intranet, publish, build, and discover, and then basically your files, all your files. It's perfect. That's the right SharePoint information architecture. So anyway, we'll see.
Only took 25 years.
And then the last thing, I guess, to hit through all this is AI is infused with all these things that, if you want to build a site, AI is going to help you. You want to build a list, AI will help you. You want to author a page, design a page, AI will help you. You want to build an agent that organizes your doc library and put metadata on it, AI will help you. It's not required. SharePoint still works without Copilot. I promise there's no plan for anything else other than that. You can still build a web page the old way just by adding web parts manually. That got better too. But, why not have the things suggest and build a far richer site and save you time if you've got rights to Copilot. So
yeah. Well, I feel like the expertise to build has been a bottleneck on like doing the best adoption cases. In lots of businesses they'll have a business unit or they'll have external consultants that help decode from the business to IT to build. But if LLMs and AI can unlock some of that, suddenly building the solution for your team can live in the business, which is just really exciting to me.
Yeah, and we're excited to see. I mean, we every day 2 million new SharePoint sites are created. Hopefully, this will help people create more and better sites.
Awesome. Well, Jeff, thanks so much for jumping on the show, and I appreciate. I suppose congrats to you and the whole team and all the people that worked on SharePoint over the 25 years. It's amazing to hold on to a a brand and a philosophy for that long in a moving tech world and
Yeah.
inside of Microsoft.
Yeah. No, thank you, Tom. And thanks to all our customers, partners, especially the members of the community, people in the community who've of their own time and evenings and weekends done events, helped people out, given us feedback. Sometimes we've done a great job of addressing the feedback. Sometimes people had to push us because we weren't listening as well as we could have, I could have. And, I really appreciate the spirit of trust we've built that even if we didn't get something right the first time, we kept talking. And I think this is a product the community will be proud of as it goes into preview. And I hope everybody who's ever used SharePoint feels like they were part of building it because we tried to listen to all the feedback.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Jeff. I'll see you in a few weeks in Summit, and yeah, congrats again.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. See ya.